Captain and Coach, episode number 16. Trav, welcome to this episode. We are focusing on the topic of is tech making us dumb? So, the big question for right now, before we even get into the thick of it, is what's your opinion? Because this is a topic that you nominated.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a topic that we've obviously been thinking about a little bit of late. I think our industry has done an amazing job over the last decade raising the level of professionalism within our industry. Now, with the acceleration of technology, we're running the risk of losing some of that professionalism, I think, and that's what I wanted to unpack here today.
Okay, that's a little bit contentious. And I tend to agree that the industry has certainly evolved from one that was quite sales oriented, and in fact, almost very cutthroat and very forceful in the very early days. In fact, it wasn't just, I saw that firsthand. So it's not just an opinion, it was the experience I had. But it's certainly one where the professionalism is at a strong level. I think we'd all agree that, like many professions, there's still opportunity to evolve and progress that, particularly in that infancy stage of preparing people from externally to be better equipped to handle opportunities and guide clients through the lending journey. But that's, of course, a little bit different to tech itself, which is, in some regards, either making things easier or potentially replacing parts of what would otherwise do. Um, so I've certainly got some opinions and views on this, but maybe share with me your perspective around why you've come to form this opinion or this view, and is there particular tools or resources that you think are potentially contributing towards laziness or mitigating thinking or perhaps becoming a little bit complacent in how we operate?
Okay, so I've seen this happen in a previous life in my time in the police. So if it's okay, I might just share a very quick war story,
Go for
which
it.
will outline what technology has done in particular to policing. So I did my first couple of years in Logan. So if you know that, that's essentially the Bronx of Queensland. It's probably one of the worst places that you could ever police. Very, very interesting place to work. So in my early days, I'd turn up to a job and there would be people literally threatening to kill us. And I'd watch my senior officer go into this verbal combat, the way they would be able to de-escalate the situation, and they were able within minutes, these people have gone from being ready to kill us to being our friends and literally walking to the police car, getting in the back of the van, and we're us taking them off to the watch house without putting a handcuff on them. So it was really amazing to see like the skills that this, and I was so in awe of what they were able to do. And then fast forward 10 years, we had the introduction of iPads. So we would have iPads where all the information on offenders, on vehicles, intelligence was all in our hands. It was an amazing piece of technology, and it was really effective in helping us police. But what it was doing was it was stopping that eyes up policing that we were seeing. So I was watching these junior officers missing hand-to-hand drug deals, watching them getting punched in the face because they're too busy with their head buried in an iPad. I remember one situation where I wanted to intercept a car, and my partner turns around and he says, "No, Trav, let's not intercept that car. There's nothing on the iPad about it." I'm like, "No, we're intercepting that car." We intercepted the car, pulled $25,000 worth of drugs out of the vehicle, and the officer thought I was a musician because he's like, "It's not here. How's it there?" They were so reliant on the technology that they'd lost their policing skills,
Yeah,
and I
they're
feel
maybe a
like we
little
we
bit
run the
out of
risk
touch.
now. Sorry.
A little bit out of touch. And so, in that first instance you've just shared, then where the officer essentially had some really refined communication skills to take a situation that could be potentially volatile to one that was, as you said, de escalated. And you use the word that they were friends. I don't know about that if they're getting in the back of the paddy
Mm.
wagon, but I get the point though. And yet, with the introduction of technology, made certain things easier, but it caused you to potentially miss some clues and cues that could allow you to do your job in be quite sharp with what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And another great example that a lot of people might be aware of that are playing at home. Have you seen Top Gun 2?
I have.
Yes, perfect. You see that, right? Like, so the story goes, right? It's they lose their dogfighting skills, and in comes
Mav,
sorry,
Maverick.
Maverick. Maverick comes in and obviously brings those dogfighting skills back, And that's essentially where our industry is poised. We've got this new technology coming in, and everyone's so reliant on the technology that they are essentially going to lose their dogfighting skills.
You aren't inferring in any subtle way here that you want me to be Mav and you be Goose in this relationship, are you? Is that like,
That is an argument that I have with almost all of my friends on who is Maverick and who is Goose. And everyone wants to be Maverick, right? So we can we can debate that over a beer on another day.
fair enough? So I've seen instances where I think it's the same thing, that technology is causing people to outsource their thinking skills. And in one instance specifically that I know of is an excellent broker, someone that I rate as highly as anyone in the industry, did not allow her team member to use quickly before that team member knew how to use the lender calculators, because quickly, of course, is the shortcut version. And then some people will hear this right now and guarantee as they hear this, that will cause some resistance in them, saying and thinking that they disagree with what this other broker's done, which is not so much about the decision of the other broker. The listeners who feel resistance to what was just mentioned is because they've been predisposed to think a certain way and go for the path of least resistance. Whereas the broker who ran that business was attempting to build the proficiency and competency of her team member from the ground up, i.e., reading the tea leaves or being able to de escalate situations rather than just relying on the iPad. And and so that would ultimately allow that team member to become a more proficient and capable person, rather than, again, going for the path of least resistance to begin with. So, uh, yeah. Oh,
We are going through what you are talking about right now.
one sec.
So we're going through this exact thing what you're just discussing right now. I think most people will agree that Quickly is probably one of the best pieces of technology that we've seen in our industry in the last decade. And I was around before Quickly where I would have a notepad, I'd have my calculator, I'd have three Excel spread servicing calculators up at one time, and I'd be bouncing around and fumbling my way through and learning, right? And new to industry brokers don't have to experience this anymore. I believe, do you know Joel Wild from 𝗀𝐻𝐸 Finance?
I know of him, yes.
Yeah, so he's about to launch a piece of tech called Accurately, which is just very short. It's you'll input tax returns and it will go line by line and extract the data and apply it the income, depreciation, scheduling, a whole range of different things, and then it will correct. I'm not completely across it, but it will also overlay lender policy and spit out potential lenders that you can work with where we've got maximum serviceability and certain things, right? So we're going to be an early adopter of this. We'll be testing this probably starting in the next couple of days. And this is what I fight with my team. This is the path of least resistance. My guys can just grab a tax return, drop it into his system, pull the data out without making a mistake, but they've never actually had to read a tax return line by line. So they're losing their skills, but it's far more proficient for me because my cost per file goes down and I don't have to go through this training process. So I'm in this constant battle of, do I train my team or do I use the tech? And it's going to be dependent on how I want to use my team. So if my team are going to be processors or para brokers and not client facing, maybe I don't need to understand them. But if I've got intentions of bringing them to the brokers, imagine them having a conversation with you, James, as a client in 12 months' time going, James, we're going to CBA for this particular deal. And you go, okay, can you explain to me why we're going to CBA? Oh, because I dropped your tax return into a system and it told me to take you to CBA.
And that's the exact point I was thinking is I wonder if what this does is it provides you content, but you may be losing some of the context around how to either communicate or understand options or explore things further. Or if it doesn't fit all of it doesn't just tick the boxes, then it becomes a little bit like a laptop type broker, in the sense that if it doesn't just sort of fit these parameters, I'm sorry, there's no deal that can be done here. Rather than what some people have is that mindset of, well, there's always a deal to be done. There's always an answer to, there's always a yes that we can find. We just need to ask different questions or look at this from a different perspective.
Yeah, I remember a story early in my career. I remember losing a deal. I'd worked so hard on this deal and I thought I'd exhausted every avenue and I was never going to get the outcome. And then the client comes to me and says, Travis, you're a really nice guy. Thank you for your efforts, but we've gone to another broker and he got us approved. He was just a far more proficient broker than me at the time. I was probably 18 months. I don't know this broker, but he was obviously very good at his job.
Yep.
And now knowing what I know, he would have relied on relationships. We placed a deal yesterday, which I had to rely on a relationship with a state manager for a particular bank. And because I had a tiered service offering from them, we went through credit. And these were these relationships he's built and this understanding that I knew how to go outside of policy and how to mitigate to strengthen this deal so that credit would approve it. That stuff's not going to be learnt in a computer. We're not going to be able to drop a payslip or a tax return into a platform and get that answer. So it's a really interesting one. I don't have the answer. I guess today was just having a conversation with you about, do you see the same issues on the horizon for our industry, and do you have any suggestions on what we should be doing to combat this? Because I have some ideas, but I definitely don't have all the answers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts, and I tend to concur that some parts of technology are mitigating the skill of being a proficient and capable broker. And by that, I mean a broker that seeks to look at more than what's the path of least resistance. And whilst there might be a simple yes that will get us to the first lender, it may not always be the best solution for the client. And I mean, that's not to do with technology, because that's questioning skills and communication skills and interviewing skills. But I do think that the more we leverage tech that makes it simpler to tick boxes and get answers without necessarily getting the full context or the story of the client, yes, we can still get solutions, but is it the best solution for the client? And I'd beg to differ that in some cases the answer will be no. And that's already happening right now. There is, at the risk of being unpopular with this, there's a myriad of people out there doing deals that aren't necessarily the best solution for the client. It's just a solution, and that it needs to be rewritten in some cases, months or years later by someone else that is thinking a little bit more globally or uncovering different things that will serve and support the client better.
I
The
think you mentioned this about one of the brokers that you might have worked with or where they've built a career out of restructuring and putting together deals that have been put together by, let's just be honest here, incompetent brokers.
uh, well, uh, and this is a lot of those deals were for extremely high earning, or yeah, really high income earning people, and so the broker I referred to built her career around that segment because there are some reasons that caused her to do that, which wasn't driven by their income earning potential, and it wasn't driven by the average deal size, both of which is obviously very high. So I think that's the reason why most people choose to pursue those segments, is because the income is high and because the deal size is high. And and just because you're doing that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the job well or effectively. There's different ways to do these roles, and there's plenty of people that, in my opinion, do a fairly mediocre job of it. But the consumer doesn't know that until they get to a point, for example, where their borrowing capacity is tapped out because it was just using uh, residential lending only without any other variables to be taken into account, such as, can you borrow through a trust? Can you do something else rather than just under your own name? And so again, there's a host of different things that could be uncovered there. But going back to the point about tech, clearly it aids us. Clearly it does. And we ain't stopping this train. It's already left the station, and it will continue to evolve and progress. And, I think it's to the credit of people that are able to conceptualize or have a vision or aspiration around something that they can see and implement, that is going to make certain parts of the role easier. But it's a bit like a lot of things. Are we losing the craft of doing core broking? Because in theory, taking away time from so-called non-income producing tasks should allow us to be better at that income producing activity, which is the consultation or the business development piece. But I'm not sure that people are improving in that area, despite the fact that some of the tech might be helping make certain parts of the loan process better. I guess the get out of jail free card for a lot of people here is the fact that and as I said this recently on another podcast, is that the rate of growth of the broking industry is increasing quicker than the rate of growth of the Australian population, which essentially means that there's less consumers available per broker now than there were about 4 years ago, and there were there were more consumers 8 years ago per broker than there were 4 years ago. So essentially, the size of the pie per broker is decreasing, which means that there's more people entering the industry. And I think that's fraught with danger, because I don't know that we necessarily need more people entering the industry at the same rate of growth, even though we've got some of the more mature people transitioning out as well. I think there needs to be some level of equilibrium there, because otherwise we will have other problems that will probably not be in consumers' best interest in terms of how things are done. That's not to
Like you
say that
make
people are being done inappropriate, by the way. It's just to say that they're being done poorly.
you make a good point there. Our industry is aging, and we do have some of these brokers, some of these extremely proficient brokers who'll be leaving the industry in the next 5 years. And they, no disrespect to the new people that are coming into the industry, but they're coming in with the aid of this technology, and they're not going to have these dogfighting skills that the more experienced guys have. I had the benefit. So there's two big concerns I have here. So circling back to that time in the police, I had the benefit of seeing in the early days these really proficient skills, this black magic, this the way that they could operate. And then the technology came, the technology aided me. So I had the dogfighting skills, and I was still young enough to adopt the technology. And it feels like I've sort of relived that again in the finance industry. So these new industry brokers, they're not going to have those dogfighting skills. They haven't had to struggle like I had to struggle 10 years ago when I joined the industry. They're not going to have that. They're not going to receive that. And then on the other hand, there's me personally. I know in the police, when I specialize in different areas, my skills are very perishable. When I was doing certain types of jobs almost daily, my skills were really sharp. And then as soon as I'd stop and I'd go specialize somewhere else and I'd come back, I wasn't as sharp as what I once was. So with the rate of technology advancements that we're seeing now, am I going to be a better broker in 5 years? I don't know. I can't honestly say that I can be. It's going to be really hard, because I will 100% be an early adopter on these new technologies and finding the path of least resistance. But is it going to dull my skills as a broker? It's a very real risk.
Yeah, I think it is. It'll make your role easier, and it might make you or enable you to produce greater output for the same or less effort. But yeah, does that mean that you're doing better by your clients in terms of the advice and the support and the guidance that's being, or that they might come to expect or want? And I'm not sure the answer to the answer to that is yes. I also don't think that most consumers have a benchmark to compare results from. So if you look across, and again, we're probably getting slightly off topic here, but in any case, I'm on a roll. So if you look at Google reviews, well, virtually every single Google review out there for a broker is really complimentary. That's why they're all 5 stars. And and so lots of consumers will say such and such is by far the best. But the reality is that they don't have a point of comparison to know how this person compared to others. And I think if some consumers had the opportunity to compare one a level of service to another, then they would rate one far lower than a 5 star by comparison to one that was perhaps a little bit more refined, polished, more advice driven, etc. So again, horses for courses. And what I just said is an opinion, by the way. I don't have the actual evidence to back that up, other than the fact that consumers don't have a point of comparison. And I have, in fact, done a bunch of post-settlement interviews to ask consumers what they thought their broker could improve. And virtually to a man or a woman, they didn't have something that they could suggest to be improved because they didn't know any better.
Okay.
So, sorry, that was not to do with tech. Maybe we should save that for another time.
No.
So,
You make a good point.
what's our conclusion here? Is tech making us dumb, or is it so again, that's a contentious topic. Maybe the answer is a little bit of yes, a little bit of no, and a little bit of we're not going to avoid it, so we need to embrace it.
I feel like this podcast we've sort of done our listeners, or one of my mates reached out and said we should be calling our listeners players. I think you brought that up in an earlier podcast, so I think we're running with players.
Players.
Yeah. So I think we've probably posed more questions in this to our players in this podcast than answers, I think. So I guess it'd be around challenge their thinking and just trying to navigate and just be aware of this. I don't think I've got it right. I've learned something already in this podcast and your discussion around that particular broker that is removing quickly. That is actually, I applaud them for that. I think that's great. I think that is the right thing to do. I don't necessarily know if I would do it. I'm definitely not positioned in my business at the moment. Like I mentioned to you before the podcast, we are overflowing with leads and we're just trying to keep our head above water at the moment. So I don't
Yep.
have the time to slow things down, and I will likely pay the price for that in 12 months or 2 years time when my brokers are using this technology and don't have those dogfighting skills. So it's I think the key takeaway for this is you and I don't have the answer for this. I don't think anybody does, but it's just being aware of it. Being aware of it and making adjustments in your business to make sure that you remain sharp and your team are continuing to improve their proficiency.
Yeah, I think the parting comment I want to have here is next time we bring dogfighting into this, maybe we can try and get sponsorship from one of the airports or the RAF or something like that, just to sort of be on set and make this a little bit more lifelike, and potentially even shoot some of this whilst we're sort of doing some loops, or as Goose said, he was inverted, man. He was inverted back in Top Gun #1. So
Top Gun #1, best movie ever made. Top Gun #2 is a close second, and I think equal second is Days of Thunder. So my wife actually for my 40th birthday put me in a fighter jet. So I've actually flown a fighter jet about 18 months ago. Probably one of the best experiences of my life. So we could
love
do
it.
a podcast just on just just on Top Gun, I think.
Awesome. I will be there with you, my friend. All right. So thanks very much to everyone for listening to this episode. If it rubbed you up the wrong way, partly that was our intention, and so we're not going to apologize for that. That might be an opportunity for you to reflect in terms of what you're doing. That's not to say that you are doing it poorly or wrong. It's the whole purpose of some of these is to provoke thought, though, and to cause you to reflect and give yourself the opportunity to assess: are you applying your skills and your trade and your efforts effectively to produce the results you want? The answer may well be yes, and the answer may also be there's opportunity for further refinement and improvement, as there is with most of us, frankly, in life. And so, if it's caused you to be a little bit on the defensive, good. I think we're doing our job, because if everyone's walking off this with the same sort of thinking nothing's to be improved, then maybe we're not sort of hitting the right buttons. Bye for now.
Very good. Thanks, guys.